recorded. Your image and or voice may be broadcast. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so what we're going to do tonight is we'll approve the consent agenda first, and then if anyone would like to speak, we'll let you guys speak first. That way, you don't feel like you're stuck here. And if others come in as we're deliberating, they'll be able to speak as well. So this is a forum. It's a little different than our usual meeting. So if you have questions later in the meeting, you decide to stay, you can raise your hand and I can call on you, but it's not just an open conversation where everyone can, So we're going to try to keep it productive and moving in the right direction. All right, so let's start with the consent agenda. Okay, could I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. That motion passes. All right, before we do public comment, did anyone have any communications they wanted to bring up before we get into public comment? Okay, great. All right, public comment. Do you want to? Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay. First, I want to thank you all for being here and for the work that you do. Thank you for taking the time to hear my comments. Some of you know me. My name is Erin Keene. I'm a Boylston resident. I'm the parent of 2 young children. Liam is 7 and in 2nd grade. Owen is 5. He goes to Tohoto Preschool. He'll be in kindergarten next year. I wanted to speak in support of the proposed school budget. Boylston Elementary School is a wonderful school, and our students deserve nothing less. Their new principal, Mrs. Sykes, is phenomenal. Her energy, her passion, her enthusiasm for the job are unmatched, and our students deserve nothing less. If the committee does not approve the proposed budget, Mrs. Sykes will be forced to make cuts someplace. Our students will have less. What less will they have? Will they have less space in their classroom? If we don't hire an additional 3rd grade teacher, the 3rd grade classes will have about 28 students each. Will they have less social and emotional support? Ms. Katie Ward is a 0.6 adjustment counselor. If we cannot bring her on full-time, we run the risk of losing her to a district that can't. Will they have less support staff? The paraprofessionals at BES are working day in and day out to help our neediest students succeed. Will they have less high-quality training for their staff? How will they recruit and retain the best staff? Will they have less enrichment opportunities for students? My son has been extremely fortunate to participate in an enrichment group, Science with Mrs. Sykes, for about 45 minutes a week. He has learned about aerodynamics, cohesion, adhesion, surface tension, rockets, thrust. With less staff, those remaining will be expected to do more with less. Our students' education will be less than it is now. I implore you to approve the proposed budget in full. Our students deserve nothing less. Or choose your less. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. You want to speak or? Okay. All right. So with that being said, the only thing on the agenda tonight is our budget. So I think the way we're going to run this is Nancy is going to get up and she's going to present this presentation. Does everybody have access to this? All right, so Nancy, why don't you take 15, 20 minutes and kind of explain, walk us through this, and then we're gonna spend the majority of time tonight having the committee deliberate and review this budget.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So on February 27th, we presented a draft version of our fiscal year 25 budget. This budget showed a 10% increase in the district-wide budget. Today, we are presenting the district-wide budget with a 5% increase. This is a summary of the changes since February 27th. We increased the school we increased the school choice allocation by $194,450. We have a new out-of-district tuition at Tohoto for $75,000. We increased to special education transportation for $99,000. That's split between Berlin Memorial School for $24,000 and Tohoto Middle School, High School for $75,000. And our administrative team has met several times now, so with the final review and adjustments from the administration team. We also pushed 7.7 FTEs to next year. That totals approximately 617,000. I won't go through them all to save time, but you can see them all listed here. This page shows what we kept in the budget. District-wide, we kept a 1 FTE occupational therapist. Boylston Elementary, we kept the 1.0 FTE classroom teacher. At Tohoto, we kept 3 unified sport coaches, and we kept the 0.40 FTE math teacher / 0.60 FTE athletic director. This will bring both of those positions to full-time. So now I'm going to quickly go through each school with you. So at Berlin Memorial, the comparison was initially presented with a 3% increase. It is now being presented with a negative 2% increase, with a savings of $106,607 compared to the fiscal year 24 budget. The Boylston Elementary School was initially presented with a 12% increase. It is now being presented with a 7% increase, which is an increase of $408,443 compared to the fiscal year 24 budget. Tohoto Middle School, High School. This was presented with a 12% increase. It is now being presented with a 6% increase, with an increase of $700,753 compared to the fiscal year 24 budget. Now we'll go over the capital changes. At Berlin Memorial, we took out the roof and we moved it to next year. We decreased IT support by $20,000. At Boylston Elementary, we moved the updates to the bathrooms and the playground equipment to next year. We decreased IT support by $20,000. And the cafeteria floor replacement increased by $4,800. At Tohoto Middle School, High School, the refurbishing of the track was moved to next year. IT support was taken out. Security swipe card systems was moved to next year. The auditorium projector, sound, and lighting was moved to next year. Our HVAC controls and repairs was decreased by $61,900. The athletic field renovation was increased by $4,240. The non-student device replacements was decreased by $25,000. The paving of the walkway was decreased by $22,000. And we added in boiler repairs for $10,000. And down below is your debt for the high school. So these next 3 pages go over the assessments by each school. As you look at these, you'll notice that the forecasted sources of revenue are from the preliminary Chapter 70A that the governor released at the end of January. If anyone wants to look at the backup of these figures, you can go to page 23 of the slide. I'm not going to go through each of these individually. What I will do is I'm going to go to the assessment comparisons so you can see them by town. So this is for the town of Berlin, and the assessment comparison has a 5% increase for $455,427. That's for capital and operating. For Boylston, it has an 1% increase for $175,357. So that is my quick version of the presentation. And I'm sure we have lots of questions.
All right, so before we get into that, Carol, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I can, my statement.
Carol's going to say something.
Sure, just at the budget subcommittee, the administrators and I've worked diligently, it's an understatement, over the past months to develop the proposed budget prepared for you this evening. In the course of our numerous discussions, we focused primarily on our immediate needs while holding to a commitment to continue advocating in areas we want to create, maintain for this year while postponing until next year. And to that end, I think what I can say about our team is we've made these decisions as a team throughout this process, as painful as some of them were. We also recognize that we not only can be supportive of our schools, but respectful of our towns and their current fiscal conditions to the best of our ability. And we met numerous times with the various town representatives. So in conclusion, we feel very strongly that this budget can be supported by the towns and best represents our needs for the FY25 school year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
All right, before we get into questions, I just want to explain a few things. So Julie and I have worked closely, or tried to work as closely as possible with Carol and Nancy with the towns. So I'm going to start with Boylston because we have Howard here, who's the chair of their FinCom. So Boylston is in a situation where they're able to give us $500,000 more than last year. So a $500,000 increase for both operating assessments and the Tohoto capital assessment. Boylston has agreed they're going to be able to use free cash to fund the elementary school capital assessment. So the thing with Boylston is that $500,000 limit, that's not just a suggestion, if we go over that limit, the town will have to go to override. So that's the levy ceiling, right? Is that the right word, levy ceiling?
Correct.
Levy limit?
Boylston will be at its levy limit if we exceed approximately $1 million in operating expenses between the town and school side, which $500,000 is split between the two parties.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a fair statement, a correct statement, I should say.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So we're very close there. If you add up, if you're on page 13 and you add up the two increases for the operating assessments between BES and Tohoto, and then you deduct, as it's in a negative, the Boylston Tohoto capital assessment, don't worry about the elementary school capital. If you look at the 322,123 and you net that against the two additions, then you subtract out the $500,000, I think we're like about 100 and...
I think I went through, Karen sent an email earlier today. I think we're $13,000 off.
We're $13,000 off, but Nancy, you have in your number, in your budget, you already have a moving money from the school choice for this number.
That's correct.
Yeah. So we'll have to talk about that later.
Megan, can you repeat that?
Okay.
Which page are you on?
I'm on page 13.
So, would it help if I pointed as you spoke? Would that help
Sure.
people?
All right, so what Nancy did is she worked with the principals and Carol, and they worked to lower the expenses, which lowers the assessment. Yep. So if you add up the 571, 761, which is the increase in Boylston Elementary operating assessment, the very top one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right there.
And then the increase in the Tohoto operating assessment, which is the 2,633,441. And then you can subtract out the Boylston Tohoto capital assessment. You should be at close to $13,000. Yeah, I know, John. So what Nancy has done in there is she has added a line to move almost $200,000 from school choice.
What about the 337?
The 337, don't worry about that because Boylston has said they're going to cover all of our capital. Last year, they covered elementary school from free cash, and that's what they're going to do again this year. So it's not in the assessment. It's something.
That's somewhere that we can see.
I don't know if that's in this presentation. I wanted to explain.
What'd you say? Sorry, I couldn't hear him.
They're committing to that? We have something that we can see that they're committing to that?
The chair of the FinCom has committed to that, so.
So our expectation is, and that we will cover those 4 capital items, or 5 on the Boylston Elementary School side, out of free cash, which will use up a good chunk of it at this point, So I don't see an issue with that, is how I would leave it, okay?
And then the other thing,
How much is that total?
if you look at the operating, Nancy's number was.
285, 450 for the capital.
Yep.
Well, that's elementary school.
Yep, that's all that Howard was just saying. Yep,
Yeah.
the 285, 450 plus, we talked about in the meet, and I don't want to get into this because the roof at Boylston Elementary, and I feel like we need to touch upon it because we've talked about it so frequently in these meetings. And now the select board had a meeting about the roof. I don't know if anyone was able to join that meeting. But,
Oh, yeah, I did.
okay, so maybe you can speak a little bit more to that. But the gist of it is the town is going to fix the roof for us. They've gotten a quote to have the roof resurfaced, which is essentially ripping the top layer off and putting in a hole that's pretty much like re-shingling the top. The library roof, I believe they're gonna be able to fix immediately
Yeah,
with
some holes were plugged.
free
that weren't
cash,
supposed to be
yep.
plugged, so the one was going.
They're
back
gonna
in.
do a good patch job that's gonna get us whatever the year or however long it is until they can get the $1.5 million or $1.3 million to fix the roof in its entirety. So the town is going to take care of the roof. Howard, you can speak to that if you want.
So do you want me to clarify a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead, because, yeah.
All right, so we had some independent people come in and do some roof assessments. Matt, one of the selectmen, has a contact. They made some recommendations. We'll be able to fund from free cash replacement of the metal roof over the library and the flashings around the window, which is where it appears that a majority of the water is coming in. The rubber membrane will have a number of areas patched at this point, and typically patches last about 2 years of membrane. But our working assumption is that next year from capital, we'll look to figure out how to do the rubber membrane full replacement at that point. So we're basically, think of this as we're splitting the work up so that it's not a huge piece here, and then we don't have to go out and finance it. So the repairs to get us the majority of the big stuff will be from free cash. Metal roof replacement, flashings around the windows in the library.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I cannot answer the question of how soon contractors can get in. They're still very busy, as you're well aware.
Yeah, sure. Assuming on the contractor side, you mean that, on the town side, the wheels will stop moving for time.
So after town meeting, and these items are passed, including the free cash expenditures, then April can go off and start working with the contractors to go figure out what bids can go out and when it can be scheduled.
And then the following year is the full replacement of the patched areas.
So that's the working assumption, is that we will do a full replacement the following year, probably funded from the majority of free cash.
So I mean, until at least 2025 or 26 before.
So fiscal year 26 would be the next town meeting, next calendar year, and that would be when you would be looking at doing the rubber membrane at that point.
So it could be like the summer or fall. They can't do it when it's cold, right? We learned that.
You can, but you get a poor job, it's the easiest way to say it.
So we're not gonna, I think the guy that looked at it said the cold is not good. So it'd either be like summer or fall
So
of
we've been
2025.
patching it all along since last year, though, and it keeps failing, right? So what's going to be the difference here?
So patches done in warm weather, because remember, rubber membrane, when you do a patch, you actually heat and weld the patch in place. So the warmer it is, the better the patch sticks. But typically patches only last 2 years. I keep track of a building in Worcester. We patch the roof all the time. We get 2 years out of our patches, basically.
Yeah.
And you get 20 to 25 years out of the membrane. You can patch the last couple of years, and then at some point you got to bite the bullet.
Go ahead.
And then you applied.
I just wanted
So-
to add that piece about applying for the MSBA
Yep.
grant. We're hoping to get some funding back from that as well, so.
But that process takes probably a year.
Or
So that
more.
would may tie into the second part of that replacement, which is what we're hoping for.
But the key thing is the library is where we have the majority of the leaks in the building. And so hopefully that will be able, again, they're not going to commit, but the hope is sometime this summer or fall, that'll be fixed.
Are you asking why if we've been patching all along? What's the difference? Why this is gonna work versus?
Yeah, just wondering, we dealt with leaks this year,
Yeah.
last year. How much longer are we gonna have kids sitting in leaking?
Okay, so I guess the working assumption here is that there's some money available from the repair process program that the state has, but it takes
Yeah, it takes time.
a year plus to go through the granting cycle to get this. And if we can do that, we might as well try to get some reimbursement of, it's 30 to 50%. something like that,
Yeah.
If I recall. I mean, I'd rather grab some state money, that's your state tax.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a reasonable plan. I'm just trying to get an understanding of the timing for everything.
Yeah, so this year, after town meeting, 3 articles passed that are on here for the roof repair for them, which is metal and the flashing. That would get scheduled. Next town meeting for Boylston in May, wherever it is in
25.
for fiscal year 26 budget would include hopefully the grant here, plus then the matching funds we're going to use from the free cash to do that work.
And if assuming the grant is 0, it's still gonna go ahead?
Then that's a discussion the selectmen have to figure out, because if it's more than free cash availability, it's going to have to get borrowed. And that would be a selectman conversation.
So lots of unknowns, but there's a plan.
So I think I can tell you from the finance committee, and I can tell you what I've heard from Matt, is that we're committed to fixing the roof.
Okay.
Okay? Not going to happen overnight. It's a 2-year process.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you.
That's great. Yep. Okay, so that's Boylston.
So that brings us to what, about 460?
What about 460?
All that capital? An increase from about 460?
No, what do you, say that again? I don't follow that comment. Sorry.
You're 571, you're 263, you're.
Oh, yeah, sorry, those 3 things
22, and then
brings us-
adding in 285.
brings you to,
It's 460.
should be, no, it should be lower. It should be higher, sorry. 571, 761 plus 263, because and then you have to subtract out minus 322,123, 513,079.
Oh,
So if you take out 500,000, which is what the town is going to increase the assessment by, the deficit between what Boylston wants to give, or Boylston FinCom approved 500,000. This budget, as stated, is 513.
Say 285 is the capital number for the.
No, use the change column, Mike.
Yeah, and you told us to ignore the 337.
No.
And substitute with 285?
No, ignore the 337, period. Don't substitute anything there, that's all free cash. You add 3 numbers, 571, 761, 263, 441, and then you subtract out 322, 123. You get 500,
Yeah, 513.79.
yeah, 513.79.
Yeah.
$13,079 is the deficit. But that number assumes, and we need to discuss that later, I want to put a pin in that because I want to switch to the Berlin assessment side.
You're showing a comparison of this year to last year. You're showing a drop of 337. So that, yeah, all right.
That's operating. I mean, sorry, that's capital.
I just didn't follow you there for a second, but, all right.
That's how Boylston is doing their assessment, is they're funding that was the offer from Boylston on the table, I'm just trying to explain it.
Yeah.
So, the only caveat I want everyone to understand is that in that FY25 assessment, in the elementary school in Tohoto, in the operating assessment, that assumes we move 200,000 from school choice. She has it on page 1. Thank you, Nancy. Increase the school choice revolving, you have it on that, yep, go back to that one you were on.
you want me to do the, this one?
No, go back to the very first one.
Sorry.
Yep, all right, so the very first bullet, increase the school choice revolving allocation by 194, 450. All right, so these numbers are assuming we're doing that.
Didn't we see, like 2 weeks ago, or whatever the last meeting was, that school choice was at like basically 0? Where did it come from?
So we go to this one. There's been some adjustments to it. So,
What adjustments to school choice?
Can you point what photo?
so if you look here,
It's very blurry.
so the increase would come from Tohoto. So this includes that increase that I noted. So we would be taking $694,456 from school choice, leaving us with a balance of $718,000. By fiscal year '27, if we continue at the same pace, using 600 each year to allocate towards the budget, we're going to be down to 200,000. We have a big drop of a lot of students coming off in fiscal year '26. I want to say it's about 13 kids coming off.
And the other, that's not to say we can't open up more spots.
I was
or-
just gonna say
Yeah,
that.
so we can, yeah, that's a problem we can solve. But the issue with moving money from school choice, so everybody understands, is that when you do that, that goes into the assessment for the following fiscal year.
Right.
So you're essentially, then the towns don't have that on their side of the assessment, right? But because we're using it for recurring expenses, it's gonna go into our assessment. So what's gonna happen is the towns are gonna be able to provide you with less because they're already close to their ceiling, at least Boylston, close to their ceiling. So it's almost like deferring the burden, right, by pushing it off. You're just, by using this free cash, we're deferring it to next year. And so next year when they come in and they're like, all right, well, you're off the bat, you already added this 200,000 that we didn't have last year. So there's 200,000 of increase for next year. So if we want to add 5 things next year, we've got that 200,000 to add. I don't want to go down that road just yet because I want to do the Berlin assessment side and then I want to open up for discussion. All right, so that's where we're at. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I just want everyone to understand that's what that number includes. Berlin. Okay, and Peg is here. So I had said before you got here, Peg, as Howard jumped in when I was, if you want to jump in or interrupt to help me, that would be great. Okay. So Berlin. So last year, what we did in Berlin is we, again, we funded part of the budget with free cash. We used part of our free cash. Berlin actually used part of their free cash to fund operating assessments last year, which made things get super confusing. So the number that they have as their fiscal '24 operating assessment differs from the number that Nancy has, because they felt that that number should not be included in the assessment, even though technically it was voted on at town meeting. So Nancy used the number that was voted on at town meeting. So that's about what, $360,000? Hold on.
381. Yeah.
All right, here it is. So using so Berlin, it's BMS is the number where Berlin, we used it, you're right, it's 383,000 of free cash, which was applied to the BMS operating assessment. So the operating assessment that Berlin started with was 3,924,434. Nancy has 4,307,149. It's the top number under FY24. So the difference is that 383K. So Berlin's FinCom proposed only giving us $178,270 total, assuming they're starting at their lower number. So in order to meet Berlin's request, we would have to cut heads. There is no way, we would have to go negative from last year. But we have mandatory increases in Berlin, such as the teacher's contract and special education. So that would mean we would have to cut things in Berlin. To meet their request, we'd have to cut about $200,000 worth of stuff from what we have now, maybe more. So maybe later on, John can talk us through what that would look like at that school, because that's a serious problem. Now, Berlin has not provided their override capacity or their levy ceiling or their levy limit. So I have calculations that we have from consultants that we all have, right, for the levy limit. Berlin has said they don't like to dip into that pool. So that's where we are with Berlin. So I don't know, Peg, I don't know if you know the number for the override or.
We don't.
Yep.
In regard to the information on the 383,000 that we gave you, it was in a letter that we sent to you and Superintendent Costello stating that that was an additional one-time funding to cover the gap, and then these funds are not added to the base. So right there you have the discrepancy.
Yep, that's exactly right.
We weren't putting it in, we took it out of free cash once. We have the free cash to give it to you. This year, we do not have the free cash to give to you. The override is a decision solely by the select board of Berlin, whether we choose to put it on the ballot or not.
But I guess my question, Peg, and I don't know what the answer is there's a place, right, where it might be over what you guys approve, but it's still under what the override limit is. So it's like the place where we were last year, right, where we disagreed, but it could still pass at town meeting.
No, not a town meeting. If
An override, you need to be on the ballot.
Right, needs to go on.
But I don't know what the limit is to hit override in Berlin. That's what I'm looking for, is that number. Is it this number that Scott gave me, the 178,270? I don't think that's true.
That, the 178 that he gave you was the 2.5%.
That's 2.5%.
Increase based on that number minus the money that we gave you last year out of free cash.
Well,
And out of, I think out of your money as well.
Yep. No, not our money. It was just the 383.
Yep, so that's where the 178.
Yeah, 178,270.
Scott is coming from, is that is a 2.5% increase.
Based on the last year number. But I guess the question is, what if tonight we vote to spend 500,000 in Berlin like we're doing in Boylston? Would that put you at an override? I don't know the answer to that. I haven't gotten that information. I've asked that question. I just don't know the answer. I don't know if anyone knows if it's been calculated. The calculations we have would say no. You have calculations from an independent consultant that we've been working off of. But in Boylston, there were some other items that had to go into that calculation. The FinCom explained it to us. So it was actually lower than the number from our consultant. So that's the question. I don't know if anyone from Berlin is able to answer that.
I mean, the excess levy capacity is up to 1.6 million.
Right, that's, yep. So that means we'd have that. Right. And
But
Boylston
again-
only has 1 million.
Right, but again, passing that, if that passed, that becomes a tremendous tax increase to the residents of the town. We passed the 4% last year, which people struggled with a minimum of a $600 increase. Based on our rough calculations last week, or 2 weeks ago, not including this current information that we have, because we did not meet Berlin potential taxpayers, and again, it's not exact, it's a guess. The tax increase would be anywhere from $1,400 to $1,600 per household, based on the budget that we originally got from you, draft in February, doesn't reflect this. So
Right, it's a lot, this is a lot lower.
Right, but you're still looking at an astronomical increase to the tax in Berlin for this. And unfortunately, as you know, and as others may know, capital planning asked you to come back. Megan, you didn't. FinCom asked you to come back. You didn't. So we were operating only with the information that was provided to us, and there were assumptions that were made. Unfortunately, your budget was 3 months late in getting it to us. It should have been in by November. So we went ahead with what we could for the budget. Thus, that's what we're giving back to you.
Okay. All right, so essentially, if we voted these numbers as is, it would not push Berlin to override, but it would put a tax burden onto the taxpayers. All right,
The 383 that was given last year,
Yeah.
that was special education, so we didn't have a choice about those expenditures.
exactly. Yep, thanks, Jess. Yep, that is true.
Jess, what'd you say? I couldn't hear you.
The 383 that was covered from free cash at Berlin was for special education expenditures that happened after the meeting, and
Right.
so that wasn't a choice that we had made to spend that much.
Yeah, it was
Exactly.
a last minute emergency thing, right? Yeah, I remember that.
Yep, and we can't just get rid of that this year because we have to fund those students or whatever the need is, unless the students leave the district, which I don't think was the case. So,
Does that mean that we're 3 months late?
What it means, Mike, is that the budgets were due by all committees, departments, back to Berlin in November.
And in the last 4
Boylston.
years, I don't remember ever.
No, that is an
getting
incorrect
that.
statement, because we provide
I didn't, sorry.
that is an incorrect statement. We provide a calendar every year on the due dates, and it was extremely clear when the budgets were due back.
Yeah,
In
that's what
fact,
I'm
we
saying,
had
'cause I don't
even sent-
remember in
Please
the
don't
last 4
interrupt.
years.
We had
Well,
even
you
sent,
interrupted me.
please don't interrupt me.
You interrupted me to start, so. And you had some pretty false information out there last year as well, Peg, so, about Berlin taxpayers paying Boylston elementary budgets, but I'm just saying, I don't recall in the last 4 years approving a budget for the schools in November. I always remember it in February, and so I'm just asking for some clarification about that.
Yeah, we usually vote the end of February. This year, we decided to vote a little bit later because what happens is we're voting and Nancy doesn't have the revenue figures that's coming in from the state. I think she's still waiting on something from in April you got.
Yeah.
So it's
Health
just,
Ways
we're
and
trying to
Means.
just be as accurate as possible with the, and the reason why we didn't want to provide things early is because the one from February 27th, as you see, the changes were large, to put it lightly. And so we didn't want to put things out there that, where you would put it into your, so I guess I agree, next year, maybe communication needs to be better, but sitting and talking about numbers that are probably gonna change is not a productive use of time. So I didn't wanna spend a lot of time talking about numbers when the committee hadn't had the opportunity to review and vote.
And
So,
we understand that, and we truly would have, and I'm not gonna speak for FinCom, we have a member from FinCom here, but we truly would have appreciated the time. Unfortunately, by the time we get the letter from you, like the final letter on this is our number, due to our town meeting, we have to have the budget 45 days before our town meeting date. That's Friday.
It is Friday, yes.
We don't, there
Just
has been
calculate
no
that out.
time left for receiving the letter from you on Wednesday and making any final changes on Friday. So we were extremely handcuffed and tried to do our best with what we had.
okay. All right, no, Mary, sorry, I wanna move on and discuss the budget, okay? And then all right, we have public comment at the beginning, so we'll open it up again in a little while.
I just wanted to clarify the facts about how the budget process works, that's all.
Okay, so yes, definitely, we will move into that, but we're 40 minutes in and I want to start talking about the budget. All right, so I wanted everyone to understand that on the assessment side. Does everyone kind of have a grasp at what Carol, Julie, and I, and Nancy have been working on for the past couple months? All right, so
I just have one.
yeah, go ahead, Julie, let's open up questions.
So we have,
Go
so
nuts.
from the Berlin side, it's 178,270 plus the 383.
Say that again, Julie.
So the 2.5% increase is the 178,270,
Yes,
right?
period.
Plus.
No plus.
383.
No. No, it's just 178, assuming the assessment is 383 lower. So it's actually, the increase, if you want it, it's the 178 minus 383. So yes, that number would be negative, meaning you have to make cuts. It's a negative number.
I want to clarify, so that 383 is a special education, their tuitions that we are mandated to, which, I mean, they need their education, we're mandated to spend. It's not a negotiable number for us, and we're not really in control of that number, correct?
Exactly.
I just wanted to clarify that, because I'm not sure that everybody, public, understands that we're not asking for $383,000 to fund anything other than education for students who need a different kind of education.
That's right, Laurie. And Nancy, if you go to that first slide where you show what we're adding at Berlin Memorial, we are adding, one more, go back, sorry,
Yep.
again. Go to the one where you show what we're adding at each school.
Oh, sorry.
Page 3.
Yep, they're right, above level. Berlin Memorial, zilch, they're getting nothing this year. So it's not like we're saying, we need a teacher, we need a this, we need a that. We're asking for nothing. We have contracted teacher salary increases, we must pay. We have special education transportation increases, we must pay. So the other increases at Berlin Memorial are maybe a few curriculum supplies here and there that are must-haves. There is really not a lot of wiggle room, Mr. Campbell, am I correct in saying that?
You are correct in saying.
Okay, so we're not asking anything new at Berlin Memorial this year.
Can I add one more thing to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
The other, I think one of the things is too, the free cash was taken as one-time funds for certain expenditures that came up as an emergency at the end of the year. Even if there were changes, no matter what, those were eaten up by other special education expenses because there's always movement within special education. So just to explain that those funds were needed still within special education. We can't go too far in a public meeting, but yeah.
All right, does anyone have any questions about what's being presented? Mike,
Of course I do, but is everybody
are you
else?
giving any? Do you guys want to go round robin and everyone gets a turn just to talk, or do you want to wait, let Mike go first? And this is a lot to digest.
I had a question about the math teacher.
Yes, which one?
So for Tanja,
Oh,
the
Tanya,
.4, so the current .6 math teacher that we're then making the .4 adding in, does that then sufficiently support the math curriculum that's going to be required in the future for financial literacy?
It's a start.
Okay.
I mean, it's a start.
Yeah, we actually cut the whole math teacher, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't
What does that
sure.
mean, it's a start? Just can you explain more about it's a start?
So we would be able to add 2 math classes on to what is being offered now.
And that fulfills the graduation requirements or not?
One of the classes that would be taught would help to fulfill the graduation requirement.
But it's not robust or anything.
I would not consider that robust, no. It would be, a foundation level of need, that we could provide for our students.
Anyone else? Mike, you want to?
Yeah, just maybe in general, Carol, can you speak to, 2 years ago, we voted on this district improvement plan. I know last year, because of budget reasons, there were several things that we didn't include that were supposed to be according to that plan. This year, there are several things that we wanted to include that we were told that we needed, that the committee voted on and approved, said this is what we're doing to improve our school district. I don't know that any of them are in this budget. The ones that are in the plan
Can you
this
give
year.
some examples, Mike? I don't have the plan in front of me.
So I know last year we did the kindergarten aides and parents. This year we were supposed to, and I think some of the public comment mentioned adjustment counselors, science teachers, ELL teachers, some upgrades to Activity for Power School, social emotional materials.
Page 2 is all the stuff, the original stuff. Those are all the original asks.
Yeah, so we're not following our plan.
These were the things in the plan.
So we're not following our plan. So what's the point of having it?
The plan guides what we need, what we know we need to have.
Right.
And we've been pushing to have those things. I think last year we were fortunate to be able to add more things than we anticipated adding. This year we're looking at like really what's essential. We're finding we can't get everything we need in the plan. I guess that's what I would say, Mike. I think we were robust in our hopes and our intentions of getting these things, but when it comes down to numbers, we keep looking at what's realistic as far as the figures. Would we like to see a full-time floating nurse? Absolutely. Right now, and I just wanted to clarify for the person who was here last week, we are still maintaining that part-time floating nurse. We just haven't increased that to full-time. The other areas, a math tutor, for example, we thought we would like to increase that perhaps to a full-time position, but we haven't changed that position from having the math tutor. I think we got the kindergarten paraprofessionals last year for Boylston. I'm not even sure that was in the plan. I have to go back and look again. I didn't take a look at that recently, but there are areas I think we're improving on. I just think I don't think we're forgetting those this year, but we are behind in what we were hoping to accomplish. You're correct in the 3-year plan, which should be wrapping up.
Yeah, it's
this
huge.
year. Yeah.
So these reductions here, you mentioned pushing them off to next year. Have the towns given any indication that that's possible?
We have.
Or are we gonna be back here having the same conversation next year?
It feels like that at this point, after going through these past couple of months. We probably will be having these same discussions again next year and looking at what's most important. We're still on the fence. The athletic director, trainer wasn't part of the discussion. That's just something that may be mandatory by the time we get to next year. We're not sure about that one yet. I know the special education teacher was something that Janelle has spoken about. I think we can, as much as she wants that, I think we're holding on that one because part of that may be because of what unfolds with it sounds like an odd connection, but the preschool program and spacing at Tohoto to be able to house that person. So we haven't made that shift yet. We're waiting for the results of that evaluation to come through. So that's why I say these are not things, do we push them off? Yeah, you're right. That's what it appears to be. We had to make some really difficult decisions as a team. We talked a lot about this, and this is the best we could come up with. But you're right, we're not hitting the highlights of that plan, in all of them anyway.
Yeah, I think I was watching one of the subcommittee budget meetings and someone in Berlin was not aware that there was a 5-year plan and that we were trying to achieve all these things in 1 year, 2 years, but there is in fact a beautiful 5-year plan that we're trying to spread out. So that was unfortunate that wasn't, they weren't aware of that fact. So.
I think maybe we need to do a better job about either letting people know where documentation is on our website, or I hate to say mass emailing because nobody reads those.
Carol provided everywhere she went last year.
We have, yeah.
The other thing I would say too is we're coming up to the conclusion of that plan, which was through the other administration and what we put down at that time. I think what we're going to be working on next year, I know what we're going to be working on is a strategic plan, which is much more realistic than the plan I think that was created previously. Although I think that was more concrete things, but we have to talk about the reasons why we want these things. I think that's going to be more meaningful to the communities, the whys of asking for these positions.
All right, what else? I just want to ask a BMS question. How many paras are in kindergarten right now?
One that's shared.
One that's shared.
And there's 2 classes.
2 classes.
And how many, I guess, current kindergarten class?
Current is, what was it about? 39?
No, 30. 32.
32. So 16.
And is there projected kindergarten numbers for next, well, I know, people enroll in August,
It looks
right?
to be rough.
About
32.
What about Boylston? We have projected, because I know this last year, the classes in Boylston, they're like each over 20? 21 per class.
Yeah, 3 classrooms, 3 paras.
Is there a projection for next year for kindergarten? Is it going to be another huge class?
Right now we have, it was 44, 4 withdrew, but that was around where we were last year, and we ended up with 63.
Okay.
And don't forget that big in the end of Seawall Street, the apartment building.
Yeah, I
You
know.
know what's in there yet.
Yeah, I know. Because that could start mid-year, people can start moving in. Yep. Yeah, that's tough. Okay, what else? What else?
Can you explain unified, I know what unified sports is, but the unified sports coaches at the Tohoto Middle School, High School for 11,000. 3 coaches.
So essentially, we've implemented a program for 3 unified sports programs. And as I think you know, that there are some coaches' salaries that aren't being used because there are certain programs that haven't run for approximately 5 years. So that is really a wash. That ends up, I think it ends up being a wash.
Yeah, and it ended up being a wash.
So even though it's there because it has to be, it's a different title.
Right. It's kind of like a new position, right? So you have to put it in, but at the end of the day, it ended up being a wash because we were able to deduct 3 coaches from the budget. Yeah.
Oh, because we added the unified sports. Remember?
Right.
I think you're asking what are the
What they
unified
are,
sports?
right?
No, I know what they are, I was just wondering that figure.
So so that figure is in fact for those positions. But when we were, as a team, when we were looking at what currently exists, I had identified the programs that haven't been running. So when we were developing, adjusting, we realized it was going to be a wash.
Anyone else? Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I know
I mean, I have
BMS
some
is
questions too, but go ahead.
fantastic, but we're not doing anything to improve anything. I mean, it can use some help, surely. And then, just it's kind of disappointing here with Tohoto. I know we talk a lot about the drop in students from 6th grade to graduation. And our whole idea around these plans was to provide more opportunities, give more offering to keep these students in town. And I don't know that this does it.
I don't disagree. But I think that, and maybe something we can, I hate to use the words do better on next year, but if we could go out to the towns and say, we need $1 million this year, we need $2 million this year, and we need $4 million next year. I mean, I'm just using numbers, I'm not saying we're gonna need $4 million, don't worry, Howard. I'm just saying, if when we do the district improvement, like Carol kept saying, this one's coming to an end. So we're gonna have a new district improvement here, we have a whole new administration, there's gonna be a new plan. Maybe when we're doing this plan, if we tie some dollar figures to this, and we say, this is what we're probably gonna be looking at.
Well, there are dollar figures in the last one.
Were there?
Yeah.
So there was just no planning to happen.
At the time.
There was just no planning. I mean, I think the planning needs to be, the planning needs to happen together at the beginning. It has to happen on year 0 for the 3-year plan. So the towns can say, yeah, in 3 years, we may or may not be able to fund this, or, do you know what I'm saying?
I do, but I would also add to that what happened. So in the last plan that was developed, and most of the people weren't even here on the administrative team at that time.
Yeah.
There was just the administrative team making that decision in the summer at a retreat. We did not include staff in that discussion. We did not include the towns
Yeah.
in that discussion. To Mike, I think to your point going forward, it probably would be beneficial to all of us in creating the strategic plan to have town representation.
Well, to speak to that, Carol, I'm not talking about select board or finance committee members, but have you heard from parents about this budget, about plans for you, plans for the district, what they want, what they do? I mean, we've had 2 people in 2 weeks make public comment, but otherwise. You've
Other
heard
than
anything,
those 2
principals or anything?
No, I have not. Other than the 2 people that joined us today and last week, I have not heard anything, and I don't know if the principals have heard anything.
I don't think it's on people's radar.
So it's not, right? It's probably not. So
It's just
we're
not
the
on
school
there.
committee, we need to figure out what the schools need.
Yep.
I think they need better than this. And if the voters at town meeting want to pay for it, then let them decide.
I just want to add one thing. I think we're also forgetting, I know people are, they look at, I can't believe you're asking for so much. I remember last year, everybody being like, wow, why are you asking for so much? We have increasing populations because we have lots of buildings going on in town. It is what it is. We also have incredible inflation. When you look at just the price of special education transportation, it's more than doubled. So we are in a really tough place where things that we could pay for, let's say last year or the year before, are much more expensive every single year. We're just in a really tough situation. So it's not like we're being greedy. I think we're trying to do what we can, but I think people need to remember that we're in this situation because of things that are out of our control. And it's hard because we're not actually asking, when you look at that, the above level, we're asking for what, $5 1, 2, 3, 4. If you take out the unified sports coaches, we're asking for 5 things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 things. So it's.
Why is special ed transportation considered low level?
I just put it in there because it's such a drastic increase.
But it's not actually.
No, because it's mandated.
So it's really
We're not
only 3
asking for
things.
We're asking.
That's not an ask.
We're asking for 3 heads.
Yes, we're asking for an occupational therapist, 1 classroom teacher at BES, and a 0.4 math teacher and a 0.6 athletic director. That's really all we're doing, and we're just kind of stuck with the high cost of everything else, and then the number of heads that are increasing as well.
1,100 kids where we lose 20% from 6th to 12th grade or whatever the number is.
So we lose that money, yes, per pupil.
And the state reimbursement was dramatically lower than we expected, right? The inflation rate was much lower than it's actually.
Costs are going up and the state aid is going down.
Yeah, if you go
We
to
talked about that.
page, I think it's 23, our regional school transportation for fiscal year 25 is projected to drop at 200,000, 38%. Charter school reimbursement is going down by 96,721. That really got hit hard with the transportation.
I'm just wondering, if we didn't ask for anything at Tohoto or that occupational therapist, like basically nothing, would Berlin both taxpayers still have to pay like $1,000 more? Like, do we know?
Well, the classroom teacher is Boylston only. That's Boylston Elementary. That's not
Berlin's on the hook for a portion of
a portion.
93,000.
Yeah, and a portion of the 100,000.
It's under 100,000.
I'm just wondering.
The special ed, there's no choice. You can't cut it.
Right.
That 517, that big number on there, you have to cut other things. So you'd have to cut heads.
Right, I guess I'm just trying to get to what Lori's point was, that it's just the.
It is, yeah, there's nothing much that we can do
And it
with that,
doesn't
yeah.
seem like the little bit that we're asking for is the cause of the increase in the tax.
Yes.
The Berlin residents would have to pay. Is that true, or is that?
Seems true.
It's, yeah, in general. There's like level service increases, but it's, like you said, it's just the cost, everything's increasing. So there's just not, electricity increased and, supplies increased and.
Oil. What is
Oil,
the,
yeah.
What is the at level budget percent increase?
Do it real quick.
I guess mandated at level budget.
What do you mean mandated at level budget?
Carol, while Nancy's calculating that number, I know this stress is on ELL teachers.
Oh, that stuff,
The
okay.
huge increase in that population. We were supposed to add one this year.
Yeah, I'm actually looking, I got it on the plan now,
Yeah,
Mike, to go
we are.
through what you had, yep.
So, what kind of burden is that going to put on the school, the teachers, and other students who are going to be impacted by that? Is there an impact?
Yeah, I think there's going to be an impact. Each year, we get more students who need ELL services. That's increasing. Janelle, I don't know if you have the number right now. I don't want to push you on the spot with that.
maybe a moment.
Yep, that's fine.
Sure.
But we're definitely going to have to put another ELL person in place, or we're going to have to move. That person currently split that position with another course, several other courses that she teaches. So we're going to have to make a full-time ELL teacher out of that.
Yeah, 'cause I think, from 2 meetings ago, like 40% increase in population or something like that.
Yeah, let me let Janelle is certain about that, but that's definitely, on the radar as well.
That was last meeting.
So that, not having that, then, not only those kids affected, but the extra strain it puts on that teacher affects the other students, the other classes.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
a big class already, it's a big class of students, and that's at Tohoto primarily. So, I'm looking through the plan, and I'm just, Janelle's looking for this, we have hit a number of positions that we've added on, but to your point, we either haven't gotten to all of them that we had hoped to. I would have to agree with you. We definitely have not. So, but I see some progress. Certainly last year we made a lot of progress, adding things that we had even planned for this year. But I would have to say we're probably about 3/4 through if I had to look at this, just ballparking things that we have put in place already, but we still have a ways to go. Definitely.
So it comes out to 4% at 923,000. There's
Total,
Yeah, correct.
district-wide, instead of 5%, so it's
It's a
4%.
1%.
So only 1% of the increase is due to the above level stuff.
Yeah.
And that's including your special ed transportation, because you had that in above level.
Yeah.
So it would be less than
The only
1%.
things you're taking out are your above level there.
Yeah, if you could take, you could
The
add
rest are
those increases.
contractual.
What percentage that is of 23 million, it's nothing. All right, so what do you guys think? So Mike thinks we need to put some stuff,
Yeah, I don't think this budget cuts it for what we want and what we need for the students. I don't think it provides the right kind of working atmosphere for teachers, or the working environment. I don't think it cuts it. Not for two towns who want to claim that they have great schools.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Mike. Can you bring up the, page 21? Just so we can look at our high school enrollment. So if we look at FY17 grade 6, right, you have 88 kids. And then you drop down to grade 12, all the way at the bottom for FY25, that's 63 students. We started with 88.
No, it's one of them.
No.
plus more than 20 kids.
61.
No, 60.
You have to go data.
Yeah, you go
Go
diagonal.
ahead, diagonal.
Right,
You lost more than 20 kids in that class?
but that's the trend.
Because that's your son's class, right,
That's not an
Julie?
unusual,
No, that was Rebecca's class.
Oh,
that's not an
Rebecca. Oh.
unusual number. That's the trend. So to Mike's point,
Yeah.
if we continue funding the schools at a level every other year, every 2 years going above level, that's what we're looking at, guys. We're losing 20 kids a grade by the time they graduate.
That translates to what, lost clubs, lost sports?
Lost clubs, we can't
opportunities,
offer
lost-
those AP classes, we certainly can't offer a fourth year language, right? We wanna have our kids going into school with the fourth year of a foreign language. Can we offer that if we don't have the staff, if we don't have the kids,
Julie,
So we're
sorry,
comparing-
does this include school choice kids too?
Yeah.
That's the
Yes.
whole, that's the total of the kids in the.
Those are
So
all
you
the
could
students.
lose, you're probably losing more than 20 kids because there's school choice kids coming in.
Yes.
Yeah, but they will be reflected in the number.
No, this is net.
No,
This
you're
is-
right.
This
I
is
Do you see what I'm saying, Laurie?
Yes, I understand completely what you're saying.
So you're
We're adding
losing
in
more
kids in
than,
grade 9.
you're
so we're
adding
actually
in,
Oh, you're
losing-
saying resident.
Yes.
well, if you're adding in school choice kids in grade 9 that are coming in and you're losing, even if your total at the end is only 63, you started with 88, but you added 15 in grade 9 that don't even live in town or don't even live in the district, because you need to fund it with, you need to get students in here somehow.
Well, and this was Julie and my argument about having the extra assistant principal
Mm-hmm.
at Tohoto, because if you look at the number diagonally from 8 to 9, that's where you lose most of your kids.
Mm-hmm.
So if they have a very positive, very, wonderful middle
Oh,
school
yeah.
education,
Absolutely.
they're gonna fight to stay here. And it's not even just the education, it's the culture, it's everything, which I feel like they're working on really well this year for very positive things. And that was the whole idea, was we wanted to maintain those kids,
Which-
keep them here.
If you look, FY23, you have 75 kids in 8th, 75 in 9th, and 75 in 10th. So you're maintaining those numbers. And the same thing, 82 to 87, we added some school choice, but it stayed at 87. So kids are staying enrolled the last 2 to 3 years.
But in 22, you had 90 and
90
8th, and then in
74.
23, there was only 74 and 9.
Yeah,
You
this
gotta
is-
go up a
this is
row.
an important, slide.
Yeah, I'm glad you called attention to it.
Sorry, Julie, I cut you off. What were you?
No, I just think it's a very important slide. Those numbers are important.
Yeah, you're losing a ton of kids.
So we started it by adding an assistant principal. I mean, we definitely
Yeah.
need more. because, you're seeing it thriving, you're seeing, more positive feedback from the middle school. I just think we need to do more.
Yeah, but if we don't fund the schools, they will leave.
Oh, they will.
They will leave.
I think we're even seeing a resurgence of after-school clubs and activities. I think the staff is stepping up to provide those opportunities for students. I would plug, for example, the drama club and the performance. It is good to see that's come back again. And I think that those are the kinds of things, it's trickling back to us again. But to your point, Mike, we want to build these programs for the kids. We see such great potential. It's just our hands are tied to do what we want to be able to do. That's just the way it's been. So we have to pick and choose. Again, all of the things on the plan, yes, absolutely, we want all of those things. We had to make some very, very difficult decisions together about what we were going to put forward this year, given the constraints we had, I should say. So I don't know if any of the principals want to speak to that at all, or I just want to. Okay.
I'll jump in. Thank you. All the things, when we do, and I shouldn't speak for all of us, but I'm going to, so jump in there, we put in our needs. What do these students need? What does our schools need? And I'm going to tell you, having to make these cuts was very challenging and stressful because of what we see of the students. And when you cut things that you know they need, I get it, there's budget, there's money, but who are we doing a disservice to? Our students. I don't want to speak for both of you, but that's the highlight of what the last few months have been for me.
I think for me, having been here the longest, except for Carol, as an administrator, I'll do that. It's, I have a keen awareness of the Berlin community, and representatives who are here, and Peg and I have talked about the need to more effectively communicate on a more regular basis. The problem we'll have at Berlin Memorial is that there's not a ton to cut. And we've come over the years, and you've all heard me be very proud of my teachers and the fabulous job that they're doing. Every time some little survey comes out that ranks us very highly, I'm quick to point it out to parents. Those are things that have happened because of the commitment of teachers and the commitment of the community in this committee. To, at this point, ratchet that back. You're right, and you mentioned, what would it look like? It's bodies now. It's, and you start to have these discussions in your head. Well, would I cut the math and reading tutors or the math and reading coaches? Would I cut this special or that special? These are the things that kids lose when you've got a budget that's already, I'm going to say tight, but it's not for lack of generosity over the years. Carol and I have talked many times that the town of Berlin, when we've gone to them and said, we really need fill in the blank, they've always come through. And that's not, school, that's not town meeting where we kind of rally a bunch of noisy parents. But in private meetings, at FinCom, with the select board, when they identify a need, because that school is the center of that town. But we're in a tough place, and again, we've talked about this. Some of the things we're doing financially aren't sustainable. And we have to find a better way to better identify our needs and then better plan to fund them. Because right now, as you can see, we're not there. And there's not like fluff up there. One of the things in the improvement plan is an adjustment counselor for Berlin Memorial, which, as my school psychologist would tell you, would allow her to do her actual job instead of being the adjustment counselor half of her day. It's a need. Can we afford it? No, we can't even come close to affording it. But it's there. And we've got to find a way to balance what we have to have. And some of it's just mandated. Special education, I mean, we all kind of shy away from talking about special education, but the expenses are crushing us. You know, it's just, so, you know, the towns were very generous with cash last year to support a group of students who had incredibly high needs. Part of what we did with that was we created a whole new program. Because we've had kids come in since then with incredibly high needs. And we're prepared for them. It was really good planning on Janelle's part to move us that way. And that's the kind of thing we have to do. You know, the budget reductions that we're talking about will hurt. And I think, you know, regardless of what this committee does or what people on the town side do or what people at the town meeting do, we have to acknowledge it. This is not a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Megan, given all the comments about better planning, and I know that you didn't want to give draft numbers, is it possible, and can you make a note, that next year we start these discussions way early? We're talking October, November, and you come to us with us being Select Board, Capital, and FinCom with a list, not a wish list, but a list of what you're looking for to say, we need 1, 2, 3. We could probably look and say, we can give you 1 and 2, can you push off 3? We can give you 1.5 of this, can you push this off? The sooner you involve us in your discussions, the better it's going to be, so it does not come down to the 11th hour like it did last year and like it is this year of disagreement, agreement, battle royale when it comes to what is the town.
Nice description. That's
Well,
good. I like it.
I mean, but that's what it kind of is that, you know, we don't want to handcuff you, you don't want to handcuff us. But we didn't have the information, so we went on your February best estimate and made assumptions from there. So if the school committee can make a commitment to come to the, not just Berlin, but also Boylston, we don't want to leave our neighbors out, come to us earlier, this can potentially be avoided.
Megan?
Yeah.
What did Nancy, Carol, and you give the towns when we met in October?
We didn't have anything in October. October is way too early. I think December, we went to the FinCom meeting and Nancy provided a very rough, we had a capital plan and a, Julie, you were there.
December.
It was early December, right?
13.
Yeah. There was a capital plan and operating, we had the above level asks.
Right.
So yeah, that was in December. So I don't know that October,
Okay, that's fine.
but I mean, we can talk about Carol, that's, you know, again, that's something internally, I think if they have a 3-year district improvement plan that, the other thing is like for the special ed stuff and I think this is where we all got frustrated last year. Our hands are tied, you know, like John said, nobody wants to talk about it, but if you get a kid that's coming in out of district, they can cost like anywhere between like $100,000 to $500,000. I mean, that's like 6 teachers right there, right? So, and it's not like, oh, you can push this off here. It's, nope, you're handcuffed. You have to pay this down. No choice. So, I mean, and then it's like when that happens, then we're like scrambling to cut other things. So,
But I mean, it would
but yeah, if I hear what you're saying, and I think that communications could have been a lot better this year. So, yep, I think.
Yeah, the sooner the better, then this way, if you know, you guys are good at the budget, we're good at what has to happen on the town side. So
Yep.
whether it's no ride, what is excess levy capacity, what is impact to residents, this is where the discussion happens so that everyone is included, those who watch this on playback, those who hear some version of the truth after this meeting. It's out there and it's said, and there's agreement, not, hey, here's our budget, good luck.
Yeah, I don't know that, and there may not be agreement, but at least you'll know.
Well, that's just it, so at least we can know, so that we can say, yes, we can shift this to capital, we'll shift it to capital in 2 years, take this out of here. Yes, we can give you this, no, we can't give you that, but unfortunately, when we're at the end of our timeline, our hands are just tied to go back to all the other committees and departments in town to say, hey, all that whatever you wanted for an extra half a person, but we have to take that away from you. So we are not in any position to do that to the Berlin boards and committees.
Okay, that was a helpful. Okay, so that all being said, we have some great ideas for next year. So right now, we're kind of faced with this budget. So we've had a lot of people say they want to add things in. If we add things in to Boylston, we will go to an override. How do people feel about that?
So with the amount, though, our plan was, like, if this particular above level that was presented, we can cover that for now with school choice funds.
Yeah.
So it was like $13,000.
It's like 200, Nancy has about, right there, 194, 450. And then I think there's a deficit of 13,000, which I'm sure.
Yeah.
If we come 13,000 close to FinCom's number, I'm sure we can work something out. Sorry, Lisa, yeah.
I think it's really important for us to all I can totally respect, I raised both of my children through the Berlin-Boylston system. I lived in Berlin for close, over 20 years. And I deeply respect all of the processes that take place and all of the people involved. We worked really hard on putting together this budget, the budget that's in place right now. If anybody's Italian, they'll know I'm getting agita, thinking about adding things because that makes it more fragile. You know what I mean? It just makes it more fragile, and it makes it less. It just makes it more.
It's not
fragile.
sustainable.
Not sustainable.
If you look at page 17, the school choice, but like funds go down significantly and very quickly.
And so I really think, but I think it takes time and planning, and out of respect for what everybody has talked about planning and about putting things forward in a mindful way and having a good plan. And I think those 3 and 5 year strategic plans are really important, but that planning, that embedded planning and transparent planning together, but to change it on a dime, like in a meeting, makes me really nervous, because then it becomes something that we can't control. Like we've thought about this, we've agonized over it. We've thought, okay, if we could do it this way, and then next year we can do this. But if there's too many moving parts, then you're playing whack-a-mole.
Just one thought too about the school choice money.
Yep.
And because it seems like a really, and I don't know that I have, all the facts, but thinking about the buildings and the size and the capacity, just thinking about, here, we'll solve this problem by adding more school choice students. But we only have so much space, right? We only have so many teachers, we only have so many sections of classes. So it's a great, let's replace maybe the kids that go, but in the end, the number maybe we're comfortable here with that Tohoto was 90 max, right, per class, right? So just with the current facility, right, with our current programming, things like that. And even that, where we're at right now, we're able to do our offerings and have students be in certain sections. The more you increase that student choice, which is great because it gets this pot larger for us, we then need to add more, right? So that's just something to consider.
It's a valid point. Last year, we talked about the cost, that you get $5,000 for a school choice kid. The average cost to educate a pupil is like 18 grand, 16 grand. So if you did it on a per basis thing, it's a losing proposition. But if there's space to fill, that's where, the concept of, you're just getting the revenue without the added cost.
Yeah, but the goal of this committee hasn't been to increase school choice to
No.
a certain number. It's been to stop losing our own kids.
Yeah, I agree.
Why do we want, we're having a hard enough time asking taxpayers to fund our students. Why do we want to ask them to subsidize other towns?
Absolutely. I guess the only, thought is if we're funding a portion of this budget with the school choice funds, right? I guess that's just where my thought process was. And if that's going to be an ongoing process that we have to do, we just need to be kind of mindful of how we're using that money.
Numbers we're bringing in.
Yeah, it's not sustainable, but it's also not, I think we need to operate with the idea that once those funds, school choice funds are gone, they are gone, because at least this community is not really interested in increasing school choice. At least we haven't been in the past, right? Because the goal is to have Berlin-Boylston kids in the Berlin-Boylston schools. And that's, I don't want anybody to misinterpret that and think that any non-Berlin-Boylston kids who are currently here, that they're not welcome or not. But going forward, the idea is to support our towns. So yeah, if we use this 200 grand in school choice, then we're not replacing it.
Yeah, I don't love the idea of using school choice money to fund the budget. That's probably the only thing I don't like about this presentation personally. So I just don't know the solution. I don't know how to get there. That's why I said, how do people feel about an override? Personally, again, I'll say my point of view on the override. I don't want to go for an override. I am not interested in leading a campaign like that. I am not interested in, going down that path, because quite frankly, I do not think it will pass.
Right.
I think for an override to pass, you need a shiny prize at the end of that tunnel.
I think taxpayers have felt the burden of their
Yes.
electricity and their oil, and
Yeah.
we're in a tough time. It's desperate times, desperate times.
So I do not think an override will pass. Even if we all believed in it, I just don't think it'll pass. So, again, in Boylston, we're in that situation where we got to cut another 200,000, or we move 200,000 from school choice. So I'm opening it up. I don't know the answer. I'm asking you guys. Boylston. In Berlin, Peg had said they have their levy. Yep. In Berlin, Peg had said they have their levy capacity. So it's not going to go to an override, but it will increase the tax burden for residents if we vote on the current budget. So if you go to the assessments page in Berlin, if you want it like with the current budget, so we're just talking about the current budget. Kristen, I'm going to ask you, I hope you're okay with, I believe in Berlin, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Berlin has agreed. So, this slide.
12.
Yep. So the Berlin Tohoto includes the bond. The Berlin Tohoto capital includes the bond. In here it does. You have the bond in here, right, Nancy?
Yes.
Yep, in here it does. She has it in this number. So we can get you it backed out later.
The Tohoto debt repayment is, I have it down as 449,954.
Yep, so 449 minus that 498, that would be the Tohoto capital, which is about 50 grand for Berlin. Super confusing right now.
I'm getting confused. Sorry, we don't look at the debt repayment as part of.
If you look at
capital
this, the
because-
debt repayment is 459,935.
Right.
And the
That's a
capital is 38,253.
All right, so Kristen, go back to that other slide. Nancy added them together on the slide. I know you don't think of it that way.
But you guys,
I'm just explaining
We
it.
give it to you as one lump sum.
Yes, so my assumption, where I want to get to is that Berlin, and maybe not this amount, Berlin is able, so the total actual capital is, what did you say, 38,000 plus the 543? 543 for Berlin Memorial. That's capital plus the 38, go back to the other one.
38,000 for Tohoto.
38 for Tohoto. That's what the town, that's what the schools need for capital. So my understanding is that would potentially come from free cash.
So capital always comes from free cash because it's one-time expenses.
Yeah.
The problem that we had is our free cash plan allows us to spend 30% on free cash. So of our previous year's free cash, which was 1.7 million. So that's 533,000 for all town and school, not counting the debt repayment.
Not counting the debt.
So the debt repayment doesn't come out of that?
No.
Yeah.
So it's 38,253.
That's only the Tohoto portion, remember, not the Berlin Memorial.
Oh.
So Berlin might not have the free cash to fund the capital as stated. But again, if you go back, I think Nancy, you've got that HVAC in there for 400,000. And I think there's some rebates. At the end of the day, we need to see what we actually paid in Boylston. Have we finished paying that in Boylston?
No, we haven't.
Yeah, so I mean,
Megan, can I ask another favor?
yeah,
For capital? I saw it come through today that Berlin Capital Planning is meeting tomorrow night.
okay,
Okay, Thursday. One of those days, Thursday.
okay.
Can you please provide a description and a priority
Yeah.
for everything that you see? This will help them because we only have so much money allotted for that, that it's going to help determine what happens in these capital budgets.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so we'll do that, and, okay, so going back to the assessment right now for Berlin, if we look at operating, so what goes into the assessment in Berlin is just operating, unlike, you missed the beginning, but Boylston adds into, yeah, so Boylston adds in the Tohoto capital into the assessment.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So, but Berlin just looks at the increase in the operating for BMS and Tohoto. So the increase for, let's just put a pin in capital, we can figure that out later. So if it would be 200,957 plus 335,911 plus $383,000 because our beginning FY24 number is different. Yep. So that's $919,868 that we would be asking for from the town of Berlin for operating increases under the current budget.
So you were at closer to 1.2, but you've cut back to 900.
They have cut, yes.
Okay, got it.
So is that doable without an override in Berlin? Because if that's an override situation, then that's another
It
problem.
depends on how the select board decides to place it on the warrant. They're the only member, the only body in town that can place an override on the warrant. So yes, there's excess levy, but they do have the ability to request that an override be called to get the greatest majority of residents to have the opportunity to vote on it.
So they could call for an override even if you have excess levy.
Yes.
So does everyone understand that?
That's similar
And
to what
what
we talked about
would
last
that?
year.
Yep, and does everyone understand what the consequences of that?
Why would you do that?
Because if then it goes to ballot and it's not gonna pass on a ballot.
Well, that's not the reason.
Well, that's not the reason that you would, but that's something we need to think
I
about.
would say because you get the greatest, and if you give me a second, you get the greatest
Go ahead,
number of
Kristen.
residents to vote on it, right? Because
Yeah.
you think about 7:30 on a Tuesday, you have parents that have kids and activities, you have seniors that don't drive after dark. You have people that are just like, I'm not sitting at that meeting for 3 hours. I frankly don't blame them. I don't want to either. So if you also do it on a day when you vote during regular election hours, you get the greatest number of people that can come out, so it's the fairest shot. That's really genuinely my thinking on it.
No, you're right, Kristen. I was just being facetious.
That's
For
fair.
us, for us, the downside would be it could go on a ballot. And then if it goes on a ballot and it fails, we go back to Berlin's proposed budget from their FinCom, right? Which is to make $200,000 of cuts.
So what, let the voters vote on it then.
You want it to go to ballot?
Because what's our alternative? We decide how to cut.
How to cut from off of this thing.
Tohoto
Yep.
and
It would be
Boylston are
tough.
getting one extra thing. We're
Yep.
gonna be slashing. That's tough.
But so there's also a possibility that they won't push the.
There is a possibility.
So.
We're still having that discussion with our legal counsel who's helping us draft the warrant as to how things should be laid out, so that's still under discussion. I will say that I think, the appreciation for all of the work that you've done in cutting back is certainly there. I think we are still really far off though in terms of, even to slash the budget just for reference by $900,000 would be literally cutting out an entire department like police or fire. So that's a huge amount of money from our budget. So at this point, I just think given the time frame that we have with everything being due on the 22nd and us being so far off, I do think we're going to have two different budgets and the townspeople will need to make that determination as to how they want to vote.
Megan, if I might ask a couple of questions that might help us, maybe not.
Okay, sure.
Slide 18 in the deck. Right, okay. So I looked at DESI published numbers for our fiscal 24. This is actual DESI reimbursement on that revenue line. And it doesn't match that number. So we've got 488 something there. And what DESI's published is $647,016. So I don't know if that's, a typo or whatever it is, but what I want to say to the people assembled at this.
It's 75% of that, Mary.
Well,
We don't get the full.
The number I said is already after the 75 is 25. It's a published DESI number. So one of the things that's been so hard for our finance committee and perhaps Boylston as well, I don't know.
Mary, oh, sorry, do you have that link that you can easily send to Nancy?
It's published DESI number, circuit breaker, fiscal 24. It's public. All of this is public. I think my point.
Just so she can look it up quickly while you're speaking.
I don't have internet access, so.
Okay.
On other things, but it's the DESI circuit breaker, fiscal 24 number. And what's been hard for the finance committee to try to come to common ground with the school district here is the transparency on these kinds of things. So if the school district can find some revenues in the coffers here, or what's available from the state, and that's a pretty big swing when we're trying to get to a number that both the towns and the school district can live with. I think it's really important that the revenues available to the school really be transparent and available to all of us. So we might be able to do what our Principal Campbell needs. We might be able to do these things if we look at those, particularly the revenue in this area, and when someone here asked what the budget increase would be for at-level services, and it was 4% and a certain figure. I wanted to also ask Nancy on the basis for that number, that 4% increase, does that include the Berlin free cash of $383,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
That's in the basis. So my understanding from the chair of our finance committee is that there was an understanding between the past chair, Michael Totman, and Scott Schultz last year that this was specially designated to go to the 4 or 5 students that were coming in. We were advised a year ago, March, that those students were going to land in Berlin Memorial for fiscal 24, and we needed to close that gap, and the school put in 350,000 school choice. It was a huge number that happened at the end of the year. It was not intended to be the budget basis for fiscal 24 as you look at fiscal 25. So we
can't cut that.
Yeah, that's
okay, all right. There's things I don't know and understand. But let me ask.
We can't cut that, so we have to make other cuts.
Okay, so in our current year budget, one of the things that we really needed to look at was what was a level services budget. This is the first time tonight that I've actually heard a number, and I wanted to understand it was my follow-up question. But where did that $383,000 go? Did those 4 students actually enroll and show up, and are we educating them this year? Has it gone somewhere else? And then I think there is a same year emergency payment through circuit breaker. Did we get those monies? I know last year, just see here, we have gotten those same year payments. I don't know, they're emergency payments. And I think we would have qualified in fiscal 24, but I don't know if we actually received the money. So the overall question is, can you help the towns? We don't have a credit card in the towns. We are under the state mandate, just like you're under state mandate for special ed. We're under state mandate for 2.5, Proposition 2.5. And that's meant to be just a little break so that the residential real estate taxpayers year to year don't get these huge increases. All of our taxpayers are dealing with the same inflation we're talking about here. And I think what John Campbell said is really appropriate. I've been looking at the DESI numbers. This district, and particularly the town of Berlin, has always done more than was required. And Massachusetts takes a look at our population. How many students, how many people we have. It looks at the land, it looks at the property values, it looks at wages. And it comes up with these Chapter 70 numbers. So the state aid that comes to us is based on a complicated formula. I don't understand it. But the thing we need to do year to year is live within that 2.5%. That's the law. It's been the law here for, I don't know, how many decades? 3 or 4 decades. And so,
All right.
I think, let me finish, Megan,
All right.
because
I don't want to go too far off tandem.
I'm trying to get particularly the educators in the room to have a little level of comfort that I think this can be worked out. And I don't want to see either town have to go to an override. Because, look, in the long term, you pay for it when you have to borrow money. We need to be fiscally responsible in our towns. And that has a knock-on effect to the schools and what we've been able to do. And if we do a plan, if we do a 5-year plan, like we do with capital, we do 5-year plans, that will make the wish list doable. But to the point that Peg made, we need to stay integrated in the process of planning. And we've had a couple of rough years because we haven't been integrated, and I want to see us come together better.
Okay.
So thank you, Megan, for giving me the floor. And was there a? Yeah, on the basis for that.
All right, so you asked 2 questions. So the first one was, Nancy's verifying that number. So Janelle, the question was, and I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, do we use that $383,000 for educating? Did those students actually come into the district, and did we use that money to educate?
So I'm really uncomfortable discussing specific student circumstances in this setting, but we absolutely used
You used the money
appropriately for special education purposes.
That's all, yeah.
In Berlin Memorial.
Correct.
Yeah, those would have to be used in Berlin.
I did send a link to the admin team to show have quick access to the information. And you just, you have to download from that link, you have to download FY24 and you'll find the numbers.
Are you referring to circuit breaker?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so on March 4th, they did update it, and I apologize, I didn't get this. They did increase the 75% so that we will be getting 646,831. And that was updated on March 4th.
Thanks, Nancy. That revenue line, 2014 forecast. So this is grand news. We just found a couple $100,000, which will help us.
158.
Okay.
So that will increase by 158,830.
See, my wishful thinking. Sorry.
That's for the whole district, Mary, so that's gonna go.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good news.
So that's good news. So
Howard.
what a good, easy way, just for the committee, you could always trade out school choice for circuit breaker now that we have more money for the allocation. Or do a little bit from each or something.
Well,
Do you know
just
what I mean?
that revenue is gonna lower the,
You can either, we don't want to take from school choice. It seems like that's not favorable. So we could lower the 194 by the 158 and use circuit breaker instead. I could allocate it differently. And then we could take less from school choice.
we don't have to decide that tonight, though. We just have to vote on.
Yeah, you just gotta vote on a number. We
The
can
total
decide
number,
that.
and then we can decide if we take it from circuit breaker or whatever.
And
All
then,
right.
sorry, one other comment.
Okay.
I just want to ask.
One more thing.
On the Tohoto student numbers, how does the Assabet contingent fit into those numbers?
Well, the enrollment's definitely going down, the aspect for Tohoto.
But the numbers are going down in Tohoto. Is that because some of those students are Burlington going into Assabet?
Yeah, but that number's also dropping, correct. Right. That number's also dropping.
I see what you're saying. Thank you.
All right, guys, so this is where we are. People feel that we need more. We found $158,000, that's great. So we can take a chunk of that instead of using school choice if we keep. Do people want to make cuts in Berlin? or do you want to add things? What do you want to do? I think we're at this point in this conversation where we need to be productive in the conversation because we.
I'm with Mary, cut the teachers in Berlin.
No.
One per classroom.
I want you to be serious.
One per grade. One per grade.
I don't,
The small ones.
I'm trying to be
Cut
serious.
special ed too.
I don't want to, I want you to say what you would do to this budget. You want to add things, you want to cut things? I'm asking honestly.
I would stick to our plan. I would stick to the numbers from the.
February 27th?
Yeah, whatever the date was. Yes.
February 27th.
That's what I would.
So you would include all of these things on page 2?
The Berlin, I would, yes.
Can somebody go, yeah, the reduction? So you'd add back the Berlin math tutor.
Oh my goodness.
That's what I'm.
The recess aid.
And then if the town votes not to pay for it, then we'll come back.
All right, so what specifically do we want to add back in? Because a lot of this is Tohoto.
I think we have to listen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of time.
Look, that's one person's opinion on the grade, that's all.
No.
You know, I want to get everyone's opinion.
okay.
Yeah. All right, so Mike is saying he wants to add back in, but just the math tutor, so added back in the math. He said just the Berlin Memorial stuff. The recess aid, are we sure that recess aid was BMS and not BES? That's a BES thing, that's a typo.
No.
No, that was
This would be a mess.
No, I thought, but you already have one at BMS. I thought we were adding. No, these are reductions from the budget on February 27th. On February 27th, BES wanted to add a recess aid. We do not have a recess aid. So that's a reduction, that's taking out the BES.
That's my current recess aid. I have a recess aide. She covers lunches and recesses and does some work for teachers. That's that number.
Wait, hold on.
No.
No, I'm
No.
told that
No,
none of these positions currently exist.
Yeah,
What I was-
no.
That should say BES.
That's a typo.
That should say BES.
We're not getting rid of your recess aid. We're not in the business of cutting heads. At least I'm not.
Okay. Should be happy to hear it.
Listen,
I told her something else today.
Josh, and Carolyn, and Megan, no, that was my question I had to you. This list, none of these positions exist today, like they're not going to work tomorrow.
Yes, that's my understanding of this list.
Correct.
Well, what John just said is, no, some of them are.
No, it was
or
a
they're-
typo.
Are we sure? Because that's not.
I
what you just
don't
said.
think that we're sure, but it's chump change. I've been worried.
No, we are sure. That is BES.
Well, I thought we
am
weren't
sure.
cutting any heads. I was completely unaware of that.
That is not a
I've been
head.
looking at
That
the
was
staying in.
BES. We had it in the
I
budget.
thought none of the cuts were heads.
No, and I just want to point out that some of them are just not adding time on to what currently exists.
But was that another cut that he put through? That might have been a different cut that he put through when he did his cuts.
Just adding time on.
They're adding time.
He did not cut the recess aid.
Yeah, that's what I just want to make sure we're
No.
saying. For the math tutor, we have a math tutor. We're not cutting that point.
But they were
That
adding a half
25,
time.
we're just adding another half.
Okay.
Half of
No.
half
Let
time
it go.
to
So to be clear, this list, none of these hours on this list are paid out today.
Mike, that is my understanding of this list.
That's correct.
John scared shit out of me.
Yeah, me too.
No.
Yeah, I feel really bad for that recess aide who cried a little bit today. Tonight.
It's in my figures as BES recess aid. Like that is what that is. It's not.
So that's a typo, that should say BES. So there's nothing on here that we were cutting, it's the part-time math tutor.
Yeah.
And the paraprofessional, the kindergarten paraprofessional. So Mike, you want to add back the kindergarten paraprofessional and you want to make the math tutor full-time?
That's my opinion, what we should do, it's up to them.
I mean, do you want to do the preschool evaluation? I think that's fine to push that.
Yeah, I think we'll.
Okay, all right. Everybody else, Lisa, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that we don't change anything like you had suggested.
Okay.
What did she say?
Lisa's thinking we vote on the budget as is, as currently stated. And what are you, so now that we found that we have that money in circuit breaker, we don't have to decide that now, but that opens up some opportunities to make that action that we will have to take in Boylston not so painful. Because we won't get that whole 158, but we'll probably get 60, no, more. We'll get a good chunk of it. More than 50%. Well, 50% for Tohoto, you'll get 65 of that 50, plus you'll get 25,
like a
yeah.
60.
You'll get a decent chunk. You're gonna get more than half of that for Boylston. All right, Laurie, sorry, or did you want to speak? I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to ask
All right,
Janelle a
go ahead,
question. Janelle, the full-time special education teacher at Tohoto, I know Lisa has spoken to this. Do you feel like that is a need more than a want?
I think all of the items on that list are truly needs. But as Lisa said before, we really did, work on presenting this budget so that it was, balanced and responsible.
Then hearing that, I would feel like we should vote on the budget as well.
Okay, Julie.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about the special education teacher and then the adjustment counselor, BES.
Again, that's a position that would have been added on to, not eliminated
Correct,
by this,
yeah.
right? I just want to make sure.
So what does that mean in terms of, that would mean she or he would be there every day?
We still have a 0.6 position
Right.
there, yeah.
I
Right.
believe-
If we added the additional 0.4, it would be every day.
Every day. Versus, what is it, 3 days a week now?
3 days, 2.
She does, if I can jump in here, she's there 2 full days and 2 half days, just because of her schedule and the student needs.
Now, is she shared with the MS?
No.
at all,
No,
or
they don't
it's
have
just
one.
a 0.6?
No, they must have been having.
They do not even have, Berlin does not have an adjustment counselor. But they got a recess aide, Jess. They have a recess. All right, Julie, did you have anything else? So how are you feeling? I know I'm putting everyone on the spot, and then I'll say how I feel too.
I mean, I would agree, I agree with Mike in that these are needs, and Janelle, these are needs. However, to be careful and thoughtful with this budget, I think the reductions are not ideal. But to Lisa's point, they did take time to go through this and say, we will be okay this year, upcoming year.
Okay.
With this reduction list that I see. So I would agree that to go ahead with.
Okay.
Because we can't add any more reductions to this. There's nothing.
We can't
to
add any
from
more
BS.
reductions, yeah.
There's nothing. There's nothing to add from.
Yeah,
BS.
we're in a tough place this year.
Yeah, this is a very
Tough place this year.
And it's, the state is not helping with the mandates.
Mhm.
We have-
Mandates and cutting
These kids
resources,
deserve
yeah.
their education just as much
Yeah.
as other kids do. And that's a hard thing for the schools and the towns.
Jess.
I just want to confirm, so the 0.2 FTE floating nurse remains, correct? We were trying to make that a full-time.
Yeah.
position.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to cut bodies that we currently have, and if the admin, BES, we need a classroom teacher, Tohoto, to make the full-time, to at least get 2 more classes added to the math curriculum. It's not ideal. I think all of us would like to put that back on the February budget.
Totally agree.
But if, it's potentially going to Berlin to fail and then we have to cut bodies, I think, and hopefully with working with the towns next year and they realize where our at-level budget actually means because of the different costs that we have no control over, that maybe we'll be in a better place next year.
Okay. All right, does anyone want to say anything else before I think I'm going to put this to a vote? Is everyone ready? I said I was going to give you a break at 6:30 and I didn't, but how about I do you one better and we put this to vote unless anyone has anything else to say?
I just want to thank the admin team because knowing that everybody's on board, it makes that it was a collaborative effort, I think makes a huge difference as a school committee member. I can speak for myself, but that's how I feel knowing
Thank you.
that everybody had their say in their voice.
Every step along the way, I mean, we were the principals in the buildings, and they were grueling conversations. So, but I think everybody stuck together and helped each other too during this time.
Carol, did you want to say
No, I
something?
just didn't know if you wanted to give your opinion.
Oh, my opinion is to vote as is. I'm a little concerned about Berlin. Is Kristen still here? Crunch numbers real quick. Yeah, so I mean, we're still in Berlin, we're still asking, guys, like honest to God, I'd love to add all this. I see the need for the floating nurse. I would love the grounds maintenance. I walk to BES every day and I'm blown away by how much work needs to be done outside. They have garden beds. There's so many things that could be done. The math tutor, everything. I think it's only fair to have two paraprofessionals at BMS. We have 2 at BES. You know, the adjustment counselor, all of it, every single thing, especially the special ed teacher. So it's painful to look at this and say this, but at the same point in time, I don't think an override is going to pass. I don't want to be put in that situation. And I think next year, it might not work. Maybe it will. I think we need to get with the towns, you know, not give them our number ahead of time, but plan. Hey, we need to add this, 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 and this. How are you going to make it happen? You know, and we kind of did that with the roof at BES, and I was very skeptical, but I think that's going to work out. Please don't prove me wrong. It sounds like in 2 years, we're going to have a new roof on BES, and we're not going to have to do an override to get it. So that's a very positive thing, and I'm hoping like we can have more of those instances with the towns, you know, moving forward. So I think we keep it as is. Like I said, the only thing I'm a little concerned with is the Berlin number, but I just don't see where we can cut anything. We're not adding anything to Berlin Memorial. So the only thing we could cut, you know, like John says, what's special? Do these kids not get music or do they not get art? And how detrimental is that to these children's education? So my opinion is, thank you, as is, keep it as is. All right, so do you guys want to take it to vote? And if there's more discussion, we'll take a break. Or first off, does anyone else want to say anything else?
Megan, can I say one more thing?
Yes.
Sorry, I'll make it really quick.
Okay.
The 383 and the free, I'm not trying to be there for us at all.
No.
383 and the free cash and the money that you've been in 350,
Yeah.
which was to fill a gap in special education.
Yes.
Which is clearly needed, obviously mandated, and no one's disputing that. However, I know that gets reimbursed a year in arrears, right? And so because there was such a high need in FY24, I think we're seeing those numbers come in higher in terms of reimbursement in FY25. So the one request I would have is if you can go back and look at those special education reimbursement numbers for FY25 and what they're estimated to be, because I think you might actually be picking up a little bit of money there. And that might be one place that you can look at that may help.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. That's an excellent point. Whereas we're getting this money, or we found this $158,000 with the circuit breaker, you know, maybe we figure out if we use some of that as well to fund part of the budget this year. I hate using the revolving funds to fund the budget, but, you know, hopefully with planning. And I mean, I hate to say this, but at some point, these towns are going to have to go to override at some point in time. Because when you're putting up houses, your taxes you're getting, if you put up a $500,000 house and somebody's paying $10,000 in taxes, that's not enough to educate even one child. Forget about if you have 2 or 3 or 4 kids. And oh, by the way, all the services, your police, your fire, your roads. So, I mean, the thing is, these towns are popping up houses left, right. They're putting on additions, you know, people are moving in, they're putting up apartment complexes. Those are losing propositions for our schools and for our towns. You want to talk commercial development? Okay, that's another story. But the towns, both Berlin and Boylston, have shied away from that. They don't want to turn the towns into that. You know, shopping malls, stuff like that. We've talked about Solomon Palm Mall. So at the end of the day, that is the huge issue I see us all facing, and we need to work together to solve that problem for the schools. I don't know what the answer is, though. All right, so does anyone else want to say anything? That's good. Yeah. Okay.
Just on your last
point.
Mike first, sorry, and then you, Mary. Yep.
Just kind of to Mary's point and Peg's point earlier and Kristen's point, you know, March 4th, they changed these numbers. If we try to do a budget in November, we're going to be changing these numbers again in March, even if we vote at the end of February. So maybe after town meeting, someone puts together a timeline, checklist, policy, procedure, how often to check these numbers, how often to update these numbers, how often to review the state numbers, since it seems to be, you know, a moving target or a moving goalpost, as Joe likes to say. But something we can all follow, so everybody's on the same page. You know.
Yeah.
I would
That's a great
take
idea.
responsibility for that because this has given me, to your point, the agenda this year.
You know, if we kept our original meeting for February 27th to do this budget hearing, we'd be back here next week because March 4th had changed it. So-
Yeah, we'd have to do another vote. Yep.
So, I mean, I don't know what the timelines should be, but let's get on the same page.
Yeah, we gotta, and maybe that's a good question for our consultant to put something like that together for us.
Well, I think the reason why our timeline was this year is because we had consultants from the MASC
Yeah,
come and
telling-
talk to us.
they were
and
telling- they're like-
Tell us to do that.
That's why we did this, yes, because they knew these were gonna change in March.
That was the intention.
That was the intention.
Purely that,
And
right.
we've never expected firm numbers in February, just so you know. We just need something to work off of, and we know it may change. So just to clarify that.
All right, Mary, what did you want to say?
Sure, and very briefly on the timeline, so as the towns start to see their revenue picture, it's an iteration, you go back and forth, and so budgets are always estimates, I did them corporate. So you go back and forth, they're never a fixed number, they're always, but we have to draw a line in the sand and vote at some point, but building it, what it does is it tempers the expectations on both sides of what can be done. And to your point about as we build new residential and so on, the state formula on chapter 70, I'm learning more than I want to know about all this, is driven by how many students are enrolled, your minimum mandated budgets, and also driven by the real estate values in the municipalities and towns, and by the wages, by so.
Right,
So,
yes,
right, okay,
yes,
so-
remember
so
that, yes,
so
we
the
went over
state-
that, yes.
The state monies, this may not be a catastrophe that you're worried about, Megan, because the state monies are gonna go up. Right.
Well, if the income, that's the other thing, we looked at this with our consultant, and the incomes in the towns are too high. Believe it or not.
I understand that.
Yeah.
That's a problem for Assabet, when they're doing the school.
Because the
budgets.
incomes are so high, so the lowers our calculation.
Right, so we should all give up some money, right?
We should all just,
Maybe
low
we can
income,
donate- We can donate it to the school district,
Well-
and then we get more money for.
Well, then,
I'm being silly. so-
low income
No,
housing,
Like
that's
the idea that the incomes are too high, and they're not too high, they are what they are.
too high for the calculation.
No, okay,
Yeah.
who cares about, forget about the calculations. Incomes are higher in these two towns because these
Yes.
two towns attract people with higher incomes who want to live here.
Yep.
Because it has a good school district, because they want to be in this type of school district.
Yes.
You start cutting this, not improving that, not adding to that. I guarantee I'll get your property taxes way down. Promise you that.
Yep, yeah, exactly.
You won't be able to sell
Also
your house.
lowers the value of your
low,
house,
but,
yep.
Your tax will be low.
Nope, I agree. All right, what do you guys think? Okay. So, Nancy, where's the final number in this? It's on page, I just gotta vote, we just have to vote.
The 23,762,458.
23,762, 458? Okay. Can I please have a motion to approve the BBRSD school budget in the amount of $23,762,458 for the fiscal year 25?
So moved.
All right, Laurie? Jess? Any discussion?
Megan, I'd like to move to amend the motion to add in all the FTE reduction numbers to that number.
Okay.
That's an amendment, we need a second.
And just to be clear, that would be,
All the FTE positions listed on their reductions on page 2.
every single reduction?
The FTE reductions. So everything except the preschool and school resources.
Okay. So that amendment is on the table. Does anyone want to second that? All right, so there's no second, so that dies. Right. All right, so the original motion is on the table to approve the budget for the 23,762,458. All right, any more discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
I'm an aye as well. That motion passes. All right, thank you so much, everybody, seriously, thank you for all of your hard work. Administrators, Nancy, Dan, Paul, Nicole, Sally, Janelle, Carol. Julie.
And Megan.
So thank you guys very much. All right, guys, we're gonna meet when?
Probably tomorrow.
Well, when are we meeting?
April
April.
April 9th.
April 9th is our next meeting. All right, could I please have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Laurie,
Second.
Julie, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well.